Assalamualaikum and welcome back to the Desi Powerhub podcast. And today we're going to be talking about how we just can't seem to dial in. It's just so hard to find focus in what you're doing, right? I've had this problem so many times where I feel like my brain is just so scatterbrained. Like I'm trying to focus on this task that I have, but it just I can't. Like every other second I'm like, oh, what about that new movie that came out? Let me look at that trailer. Or my phone, someone's calling me. Oh, let me see what they're doing, what they're up to. Or I still need to order my groceries and the day's almost over and stuff like that. Or anything, right? As soon as you need to work or focus on something, I feel like that's when the creative powers of our brain wake up. And that's a problem because in this world, at this point, focus has become something that's highly seeked out, and it's become something that's become an asset, and not a lot of people have it. I'm not sure how factually correct this information is because how do you even measure attention spans? But it's been reported that goldfishes have around 9 seconds of attention span, and in the year 2000, humans were known to have like a 12-second attention span, which is, I mean, it's pretty close, but unfortunately now it's decreased to 8 seconds, which it seems horrifying because we have a lower attention span than a goldfish, and we're human. I mean, we're not in an aquarium, but the fact of the matter is that it's something that we really need to polish and work on because if you don't, then we're taking double amounts of time to finish something, you can't learn a skill, and overall life's just not a lot of fun when you can't even focus on something that you want to focus on, right? And I think maybe it's because of the amount of stimulus we have around us. Like we're always on a dopamine rush. We're always rushing. We're always thinking about stuff. And even for me, ever since I purchased headphones, they're always on my head. And I feel like there's always a podcast going on, a book, an audiobook running in the background, or maybe some song or nasheed going on. And initially, obviously, it feels productive, right? Because there's this podcast or something and you're learning information. But if you look at the amount of information a human brain can absorb in a day, it's not a lot. And so if you keep on filling that brain with so much information, just looking for the next hit or just feeling like you're being very productive listening to all these podcasts, you might actually be just filling your brain up without ever getting real value. I'm not sure if you've felt this way, but it feels like reading books takes a lot more time and it's a lot more slower than just listening to audiobooks or podcasts. It feels a lot more nicer because you feel like, oh, I'm getting this information and it's very useful information. While with books, it takes a little bit longer for that hit to hit you or for that thought to settle in because you have to take time out and really be able to focus on that. And maybe that's the value in it, right? Because if you are able to focus on a book and think through the message and really absorb what's going on, that's when you're actually internalizing the lessons that are being taught. So it doesn't really matter how much content you're consuming if you're not consuming it wisely. And why that's important for the topic we have today is because if you don't know how to space out or just silence all these thoughts, even give your brain time to just zone out and have these boring thoughts just sort through all the data you've been consuming, you won't be able to focus when you actually have to because all the thoughts that would have assembled themselves and organized themselves in your downtime when you are waiting in line or climbing up the steps or doing something very menial, they will start trying to organize themselves when you're trying to sit down and just blank out and focus on an article reading a paper. And so the first step of it is something that Sasha Hamdani says. It's the true secret to dialing in is being able to space out. So the first step would be train your mind to be able to space out, to be able to relax and have these thoughts. Don't overwhelmingly keep on consuming content 24/7 thinking it's productive because I like this phrase a lot. It's called mental masturbation because that's what it is. You're just looking for a next hit. Oh my gosh, that information was life changing. Oh my gosh, I'm so inspired. But what you're doing is you're just looking for that same dopamine hit to feel like you're this very intelligent, you're this very cultured sort of person. So remember, you need to take time to allow yourself to feel that boredom, to assemble your thoughts. And while doing menial tasks, it's not always the best option to try to optimize things. And I'm pretty sure you'll experience this as soon as you start doing it. Initially, it's going to be very hard to focus, but over time, when you start training your brain to accept boredom and try to focus, it'll be more creative because that downtime that you give it is like a break for the brain to assemble these thoughts. And then when you actually need ideas, when you actually need your brain to work, it can perform a lot better and it can give you a lot more valuable information and ideas that you wouldn't even know you had. So that's the first step. The second step is to create a distraction-free environment. And I'm pretty sure none of us want to hear this, but it's true. And your phone is a huge source of distraction. If you have to, I would recommend leaving your phone outside. And I don't want to do that because I would like to video call from time to time and stuff, but honestly, that's just an excuse. So leave it out of the room, leave it across the room, not close enough that you can just roll on your chair and go get it. So a little bit farther, or Something I like to do is I have a cat, so I just get her to sit on my lap. And so when she does, I can't get up, right? Because then she falls asleep or something, and I don't want to disturb her. So that's like a good way to like anchor me down. So like create a distraction-free environment, keep your phone to the side, close any unnecessary tabs on your computer. I struggle with this when you have like three desktops open on your laptop, or like yeah. So when you have three desktops open on your laptop, you can add a lot of tabs, add a lot of windows. You might be feeling like, oh, it's okay, this is for this section, this is for another section, but sometimes it just becomes too much. So close those tabs and find a quiet place where you know you won't be disturbed. And put the stuff that you know you're gonna want in the next hour or so, like water or some snacks or anything really, like go to the bathroom beforehand or whatever. So creating that distraction-free environment where you know you can study or where you can focus is pretty important. And if you want to add a little bit of psychology into it, there's something that my professor told me, which was that if you associate your studying routine or you focusing with like a lamp or a lighting or a scented candle or a diffuser, anything of that sort, right? Initially, so whenever you're studying, whenever you're working, you turn it on. You put a scent, you put your diffuser on, whatever. You turn it on as soon as you're in your focus mode. But as soon as you start getting distracted, you instantly turn it off. And now this way, your brain is gonna start associating being able to focus with that light. So initially, you're focusing and that light's on, but eventually it's going to turn into, okay, the light's on, so I need to focus. So it's a little bit like the story between the researcher and the dogs, right? The researcher would come over, ring a bell, and then give them the food. So the sight of the food made the dogs salivate, right? But eventually, the ring of the bell and even the sound of the footsteps of the researcher made the dogs start salivating. Now, that's not something that dogs would normally salivate upon, but it's just that they've formed this sort of associations and like have these cues where your mind instantly knows that, okay, if this is on, that means I'm gonna focus. And some of my friends have tried this and they attest to this, that as soon as they get the scent on or something, after a few weeks of like constantly doing it, their mind can focus a lot more quicker and easier than they used to do. And the second thing is, this is something that I do often, is like I chunk in as much as I think is humanly possible, because that makes you feel good while planning, right? That makes you feel like you've got it together. But what that's doing is that it's backfiring on you because you're putting in all those yeses in the calendar and you're thinking it's gonna make it is making you happy, it makes you feel productive in the moment. But afterwards, when you can't live up to all those yeses and they turn into no's, then eventually you won't be motivated to even try. So it's very important to set realistic goals, make sure it's manageable. Don't like expect that something that's going to take 4 hours, if you put it in as 1 hour, it's just magically going to be done. It doesn't work like that. So take your time out and make sure to have realistic goals. Whatever time you think it's going to take you, double it. And eventually you'll get better at managing or like guessing how much it's going to take. Just like keep your ego to the side. That's something I struggle with, but I guess we're both going to learn together, right? And take breaks. I know it's very hard. You might want to punish yourself if you're not focusing and, sit for even longer, but that can be counterproductive because your brain is just like slugging through and it just hates what's going on. So then you aren't able to focus. It'll just keep on shoving other suggestions at you. About how about we do this or how about we do that? Or like, oh, painting seems really interesting right about now and stuff like that. So taking those breaks can help associate like a positive relationship to doing that work because you're not torturing yourself. You're trying to like improve your habits, right? And restricting yourself obsessively is definitely not the way to go if you want to do this consistently and for a longer time, right? So just get up, stretch, move around. Using technology is not going to be a good break because tech makes time go faster and that's not what you want. You want to feel your breaks out. You want to feel rested when you get back to the study session or your work session, right? So your break should be like walking around in the house or walking around in the workspace or even outside or just like meditating or quick 2 minute, 3 minute yoga. They have those. Just Google on YouTube quick 5 minute yoga and you'll come up with something good. And it's always really refreshing. So do something that will get you physically and mentally refreshed, not like clog you down with more information. So this links with the last point, which is practice mindfulness, because mindfulness is what's going to train your brain to accept boredom. And this could be through prayer, or this could be just sitting in a corner and taking a few deep breaths. You could start something on your watch or get a nap. They're pretty useful. And honestly, I need to start doing them a lot more often because whenever I do it, I feel so clear headed after because it just, even guided meditations, it just gives you that pause that you need to just like reset and stop your thoughts. For some people it could be journaling or like just talking to someone or just talking to yourself. You just need that time to just stop, reset, relax your brain, and then continue onwards. And then another tip that I have for you is don't just be like, okay, it's Saturday or it's Thursday, I'm gonna work through the entire day. Oftentimes that just makes you be more unproductive. Like This is a very interesting thing that I like to think about often, is that tasks expand to take up the time you give it. And it's a little bit like the dragon story, where there's like a dragon, and if you give it a teapot, it'll fit in that teapot. But if you give it a whole room, it'll fit in that whole room. If you give it a building, it'll take up the whole building. And so tasks are a bit like this, right? Maybe it'll take you 4 hours, but if you give it the entire day, it's going to take you maybe 10. And those 10 hours, you're not working with full focus. You're like working 10 minutes and then getting distracted, fighting to get your mind back on track, and then working 10 minutes with focus, and then 15 minutes of distracted, fragmented focus. And so having something you look forward to, or like have planned for the evening or afterwards, something you're excited by, gives you that little bit of a push. And I know it can seem hectic planning things out at the end of the day when you're tired, or when you feel like, oh, it would be so much better if I could rest or if I could get some work done. You will never get that work done if you couldn't get it done beforehand. If you couldn't get it done in all the hours you had in the morning, don't expect that you'll be able to do it when you're tired and mentally exhausted and already like winding down. Don't think you can do that at that time. So instead, if you have something you look forward to, like a time commitment thing, like with a friend, or like you need to meet up with friends to play basketball or hang out with family or whatever, that's a bit of a push. That's going to tell your brain, okay, I need to get this done by 6 p.m. So whatever I have to do, my work needs to be done by then. Otherwise, I'm going to be in trouble from both sides, right? So that's like my big tip. That's personally, I found that although it's a little bit stressful trying to manage the time, if I have something to look forward to at like in the evening, I try to rush, don't give myself excuses, and try to finish things beforehand and in time. So these were my instant tips to help you focus better and like zone in on what you're doing. And it might be hard to accept all of these tips because, like, I mean, you know what you gotta do, but it's hard to sometimes acknowledge it. So you can keep bullet points of it and like a table or your workspace, and just look at them and follow through them one by one, and hopefully it's gonna be a lot better. And remember, everybody always starts from somewhere, and that somewhere where you might even be 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but like the fact that you're starting is something to be proud of. And if you keep on going at it, you might even increase your focus to a lot more than 15, 20 minutes, maybe 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, who knows, right? But the purpose, or like the point of the matter, is you want to do or like work efficiently in the time that you're working, and then spend the rest of the time enjoying and socializing and learning new skills and like living life. Because are you working to live or living to work, right? Which one is it? Because you don't want to be working the entire time and just missing out on life. I mean, you could be passionate about your work, but there's so much to this world that you need to do, right? So write these tips down, follow these tips, and just to summarize, create a distraction-free environment, set realistic goals for yourself, take breaks and train yourself eventually, practice mindfulness, and definitely have something planned out that you look forward to afterwards, like a time restraint stuff. And that's about it for today. And I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave some likes, comments, and give me more suggestions, because I really enjoy making these videos. That's about it. And assalamu alaikum. Have a beautiful week.